Combat flight simulators are video games used to simulate military aircraft and their operations. These video games are distinct from dedicated flight simulators used for military flight training, which consist of realistic physical recreations of the actual aircraft cockpit. History: prior to the rise of video games, Sega produced arcade games that resemble video games, but were in fact electromechanical games that used rear image projection in a manner similar to the ancient zoetrope to produce moving animations on a screen. One such electromechanical game by Sega was Jet Rocket, a flight simulator featuring cockpit controls that could move the player aircraft around a landscape displayed on a screen and shoot missiles onto targets that explode when hit. In 1975, Toyota released an arcade video game simulator, Interceptor, an early first-person combat flight simulator that involved piloting a jet fighter, using an 8-way joystick to aim with a crosshair and shoot at enemy aircraft that move in formations of 2 and scale in size depending on their distance to the player. Atari Incorporated's Red Baron used quadra-scan graphics and sound effects to simulate first-person flight combat. The earliest version of Microsoft Flight Simulator had crude graphics, simple flight models, a gyro, and a combat option, with dogfighting in a World War I SOP with Camel. This feature was removed in the simulator after v4.0, though the Camel itself remained as one of the standard aircraft for some time. Shortly after Microsoft Flight Simulator was released for the 8-bit computer, Microsoft released Jet in 1985. This simulator used simple filled wireframe graphics and a small generic battle space to allow players to fight MiGs in an F-18 or F-16. The 5 or 6 frames per second refresh rate was barely playable. There were also titles released for the Atari 2600 that attempted to simulate flight combat. Two of the more successful examples are Mattel's Air Raiders and Milton Bradley's Spitfire Attack. However, flight controls are limited on these as the 2600's controller consists of a joystick and a single button. The early 2000s saw several rival publishers such as NovaLogic with titles like the Comanche series that simulated helicopter combat and later Jane's WWII fighters, which had small features that the Microsoft titles lacked, such as more detailed visible damage. A breakthrough occurred when Namco launched Air Combat, for PlayStation 1, which would go on as the Ace Combat series. The series would continue with sequels for PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Although mass interest has waned in recent years, the genre is still popular today, with many titles specializing in certain types of aircraft or historical periods or wars, with Microsoft remaining one of the market leaders. Microsoft currently has 3 combat flight simulators: Combat Flight Simulator WWII Europe Series, Combat Flight Simulator 2 WWII Pacific Theater and Combat Flight Simulator 3, Battle for Europe. Ubisoft is now a leading publisher in the genre with the acclaimed IL-2 Stamovik series, which some claim to be more realistic than other games in the genre, the first of which was first released in 2001. Types: combat flight simulators are usually classified according to their historical period, type of aircraft, level of detail and single versus multiplayer. Historical: there are simulators for most modern periods and wars, including the following: World War I by order of appearance, Knights of the Sky, by Microprose, Red Baron, by Sierra Entertainment, Dawn Patrol, by Rowan Software, Wings of Glory, by Origin Systems, Flying Corps, by Empire Interactive, Red Baron 2, by Sierra, Red Baron 3D, by Sierra, First Eagles, The Great War 1918, by Third Wire, Rise of Flight, The First Great Air War, by 777 Studios, Dogfighter, by Dark Water Studios. World War II, Ace of Aces, by Accolade, Their Finest Hour, by Lucasfilm Games, Chuck Yeager's Air Combat, by Electronic Arts, Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe, by Lucasfilm Games, Aces of the Pacific, by Dynamite Sierra, B-17 Flying Fortress, by Vector Graphics, Aces over Europe, by Sierra, 1942, The Pacific Air War, by Microprose, Air Warrior, by Kesmai, Fighter Duel, by Jaeger Software, Fighter Ace, by VO1 Russia BST Soft, Air Warrior 2, by Kesmai, European Air War, by Microprose, Combat Flight Simulator WWII Europe Series, by Microsoft Games Studio, Fighter Squadron, The Screamin' Demons Over Europe, by Parsoft Activision, Jane's WWII Fighters, by Jane's Combat Simulations, Aces High, by High Tech Creations, B-17 Flying Fortress, The Mighty Eighth, by Wayward Design, Combat Flight Simulator 2, by Microsoft Games Studio, Rowan's Battle of Britain, by Empire Interactive, IL-2 Stamovik, by 1C, Maddox Games, Combat Flight Simulator 3, Battle for Europe, by Microsoft Games Studio, Pacific Fighters, by 1C, Maddox Games, Battle of Britain 2, Wings of Victory, by A2A Simulations, IL-2 Stamovik, 1946, by 1C, Maddox Games, Attack on Pearl Harbor, by Legendo Entertainment, Dogfights, The Game. By Kuma Reality Games, IL-2 Stamovik, Birds of Prey, by Gaijin Entertainment, Heroes Over Europe, by Transmission Games, IL-2 Stamovik, Cliffs of Dover, by 1C, Maddox Games, Birds of Steel, by Gaijin Entertainment, IL-2 Stamovik, Battle of Stalingrad, by 1C Game Studios, World of Warplanes, by Wargaming, War Thunder, by Gaijin Entertainment, Fighter Wing 2 by Matt Zelin, available on the Google Play Store. Korean War, Chuck Yeager's Air Combat, by Electronic Arts, Mig Alley, by Rowan Software, War Thunder, by Gaijin Entertainment. Vietnam War, Chuck Yeager's Air Combat, by Electronic Arts, Flight of the Intruder, by Spectrum Holobyte, Wings Over Vietnam, by Third Wire, Strike Fighters 2, Vietnam, by Third Wire, Max Storm, by Namco. Modern Planes and Helicopters, F-15 Strike Eagle, by Microprose, F-15 Strike Eagle 2, by Microprose, F-29 Retaliator, a fictional plane simulation, by DID, Apache Strike, by Activision, a 10-tank killer, by Dynamix, Choksaway, by The Fourth Dimension, F-22 Interceptor, by Ingram Entertainment, Nighthawk, F-117A Stealth Fighter 2.0, by Microprose, LHX, by EA, Top Gun, Danger Zone by Konami, Birds of Prey, by Electronic Arts, Chuck Yeager's Air Combat, by Electronic Arts Avenue 8B Harrier Assault, by Domark, F-15 Strike Eagle 3, by Microprose, TFX. By DID, Dogfight, by Microprose, Fleet Defender, by Microprose, Strike Commander, by Origin, Comanche, by Novalogic, EF-2000, by Digital Image Design, Apache Longbow, by Digital Integration, Su-27 Flanker, by Eagle Dynamics, A-10 Attack. By Parsoft Interactive, Air Combat, by Namco, Koala, by Amiga, Comanche, by Novalogic, F-22 Lightning II, by Novalogic, Jane's AH-64D Longbow, by Jane's Combat Simulations, A-10 Cuba. By Activision, Bogey Dead 6, by SCEE, Jane's Fighters Anthology, by EA, JSF, by Eidos, Hind, by Digital Integration, F-22 Raptor, by Novalogic, F-22, Air Dominance Fighter, by Digital Image Design, Jane's Longbow 2, by Jane's Combat Simulations, Ace Combat 2, by Namco, Falcon 3.0, by Spectrum Holobyte, Comanche 3, by Novalogic, Jane's F-15, by Jane's Combat Simulations, Falcon 4.0, by Microprose, Enemy Engaged, Apache vs. Havoc, by Razorworks, Aero Fighters Assault, by Paradigm Entertainment, Comanche Gold, by Novalogic, F-22 Lightning III, by Novalogic, Jane's FA-18, by Jane's Combat Simulations, Ace Combat 3, Electrosphere, by Namco, Aero Wings 2, Airstrike, by Crave Entertainment and CRI, Air Force Delta, by Konami, Eurofighter Typhoon, by Digital Image Design, Operation Flashpoint, by Bohemia, Ace Combat 04, Shattered Skies, by Namco, Comanche 4, by Novalogic, Flanker 2.5, by Eagle Dynamics, Air Force Delta Storm, by Konami, Lock-On, Modern Air Combat, by Eagle Dynamics, Ace Combat 5, The Unsung War, by Namco, Air Force Delta Strike, by Konami, Falcon 4.0 Allied Force, by Lead Pursuit, Red Jets, by Graffiti Entertainment, Ace Combat X, Skies of Deception, by Namco, Ace Combat 0, The Balkan War, by Namco, Ace Combat 6, Fires of Liberation, by Namco, Digital Combat Simulator, by Eagle Dynamics, Ace Combat XI, Skies of Incursion, by Namco, Ace Combat, Joint Assault, by Namco, Apache, Air Assault, by Gaijin Entertainment, Dark Void, by Capcom, Strike Fighters 2, North Atlantic, by Thirdwire, C. Thirdwire Productions, Take on Helicopters, by Bohemia, Ace Combat, Assault Horizon, by Namco, 7G, C. Digital Combat Simulator, Fighter Ops, C. Digital Combat Simulator, Ace Combat Infinity, by Namco, Ace Combat, Assault Horizon Legacy, by Namco, Aces of the Air, by Highway Star. Survey Many of the historical combat simulators are classified as survey simulators, because they include a variety of aircraft from the period in question, typically from all nations participating in the conflict. Early simulators often suffered from flight models and instrument panels that differed little between aircraft, but more recent examples have excelled in this regard, forcing the virtual pilot to learn the carefully modeled strengths and weaknesses of the various types. There have been modern jet survey simulators as well, typically with simplified and generic modeling of radar, navigation, and weapons. The classic Electronic Arts published Jane's line of flight simulations ended by the start of the 2000s. Around the same time, however, a new company, Thirdwire, emerged and continued its legacy by releasing a series of flight simulations with similar goals in mind. Tsuyoshi Kurato, the series' main developer, was involved with the earlier Jane's titles, and the new series, called Strike Fighters Wings Over, featured similar simplified but improved weapon handling and flight model to earlier survey simulations while updating the visuals to the new decade's level. Modern jet combat aircraft and helicopters have a variety of complex electronic and weapon systems that are specific to a particular aircraft. This has led to a genre called the study sim, which focuses on modeling an aircraft's systems as accurately as possible, often requiring thick manuals that rival the real manuals in detail. EF-2000 might be an early iteration of such games, and when released by Digital Image Design in 1995 it quickly garnered a cult following, including a user group that produced a detailed online manual of weapons and tactics. Soon afterward, a collaborative effort between Electronic Arts and Jane's specialized in such sims in the 1990s with titles such as Jane's Longbow, Jane's Longbow 2, Jane's F-15 and Jane's FA-18. Falcon 4.0 is perhaps the highest regarded example of this genre. This detailed simulation of the USAF F-16 Fighting Falcon was based on a series first begun in 1987. Later iterations improved the fidelity of avionics, weapons systems, physics, and flight models until version 4 was released by Spectrum Holobyte in 1998. Official development stopped after a few updates, but thanks to the intervention of Microprose chairman Gilman Louie, the Falcon 4 community took over development of further versions and add-ons. As of 2011, the community development is still highly active. Helicopter simulations have their own story, beginning with Gunship, by Microprose, in 1986. Nearly 10 years later, in 1995, Digital Integration released Apache Longbow. The most sophisticated helicopter game to date, it would only be exceeded by Origin the year following. In 1996, Jane's AH-64D Longbow was created by Origin and released by Electronic Arts as part of the Jane's Combat Simulator series. The sequel, Jane's Longbow 2, was released late in 1997, improving every aspect of the game, particularly the terrain and objects the following year. In 1998, Empire Interactive released Enemy Engaged, Apache vs. Havoc, allowing players to choose to fly for either the US or for Russia. Meanwhile, Nova Logic released the final iteration of their Comanche series in 2001. The Digital Combat Simulator started with its first release DCS, Black Shark in 2008, a series of simulations, which can only be compared with Falcon 4.0. The PC game simulates the Russian Kamov Ka-50 attack helicopter and was developed by Eagle Dynamics in cooperation with helicopter manufacturer Kamov. The simulation features a complete and detailed cockpit of the Ka-50. All relevant switches are accurately modeled and functional. Over 500 key commands are mapped, but the fully interactive cockpit allows virtually every switch and radio button to be clicked and changed. Besides the traditional input devices such as joystick, throttle and pedals, DCS has a built-in support for track IR with 6DOF, creating a very realistic experience. Due to the increased flexibility of the DCS system, additional fixed-wing aircraft and helicopter add-ons will be released as modules one by one, each module providing another realistic vehicle. The latest module released features the North American P-51 Mustang. Modern jet. This type includes all simulators of modern jet aircraft. These simulators can usually also be classified by their historical context or level of details. There have been many modern jet sims, some of them listed above under survey sims and study sims. Some have concentrated on future fighters, while others have simulated well-known existing fighters. A recent example is Lock-On, Modern Air Combat, which attempts to bridge the study survey gap with quite detailed models of several US and Russian aircraft. Multiplayer. Most simulators listed can only be played by a single player, although most titles from the late 1990s on include some sort of multiplayer network capability. With single-player combat simulators, everything other than the player's own aircraft is controlled by the program's AI. Although modern video games create fairly intelligent and independent behavior for adversaries or allies, advanced players find even the best to be too predictable. Multiplayer games allow players to oppose one or many human players for a much more realistic and challenging experience. Some simulators exist only or primarily in Internet multiplayer versions. Other aspects: free combat flight simulators. Many free flight simulators, such as Digital Combat Simulator and War Thunder, can be downloaded for free off of the Internet. Missions, campaigns, mission builders. However realistic their flight, weapon, and system models may be, combat flight sims remain video games and as such, many players seek replay value. Simulators enhance the replay value by not only offering a variety of single missions, but also randomly generated quick missions or longer campaigns consisting of several smaller mission or objectives. Many simulators also include mission builders, which allow the player to create missions. The mission builder for Red Baron 2 was quite powerful, as was the mission builder for IL-2 Stamovik and Rise of Flight. Most campaigns are dynamic flowing, which means they change according to the results of each successive mission. For example, if the player destroys a target of opportunity, which turns out to be a truck carrying an enemy leader, then the campaign starts to take a different path. Some campaign models have been developed which are fully dynamic, and where successive missions take place in an environment which is persistent. A notable pioneer in this area was Andy Hollis, producer of the Jane's Longbow series. Digital Image Design, with their release of F-22 Total Air War in 1998, took this to a level comparable to or beyond that of Falcon 4.0, allowing a transparency into the larger strategic battlefield by use of multiple screens and a god's eye view. Controls and other hardware. As real-time applications with a lot of things going on, combat flight simulators are among the most computer and graphics demanding applications at any given time, and many sim fans are constantly upgrading their hardware, including the most advanced graphics cards. These sims have also given rise to a variety of hardware add-ons such as HOTAS controllers that allow full control of most functions without touching the keyboard. Voice control and head tracking view control systems are also available for home flight sim enthusiasts. References: D.S. Cohen, Killer Shark, the undersea horror arcade game from Jaws, About.com, retrieved May 3, 2011, Jet Rocket at the Killer List of Video Games, Tomohiro Nishikado's biography at his company's website. Dreams, Incorporated. Archived from the original on April 1, 2009. Retrieved March 27, 2011. Interceptor at the Killer List of Video Games, Pearl, Rick. Closet Classics. Electronic Games. Pages 82. Retrieved January 6, 2015. http www.check6fr Manuals DCSBS Flight Manual Eng PDF. External links, MeGMAN's Flight Sim Museum, Video Game Flight Simulators from the 1970s to the present day, 1.